here to talk to you about managing and optimizing your creative cycle. And the first question that I should try to answer is why it's important to talk about the creative cycle. So we heard this morning our colleague from Baidu named Ira mentioning that 70% of the performance of a UA campaign comes from the creative itself. So the important question is, how the hell do I make sure to have enough creatives to run on my campaign? So and that, once again, I'm here showing how a good creative. So the click-through rate is a dotted green line, and you can see, some really good performing creatives allowed us to scale our activity quite massively, which is quite nice. So how do you make sure to find good quality creative? But also, it's known that each creative has some sort of lifespan, which varies from creative to creative. So we tend to see an increase in performance. This can be hours, this can be days, and then there is a kind of a decline over time. Once again, it can be weeks, can be months. Some creatives can be run for years even without losing performance, but they all tend to die at some point. So not only you need to make sure to find good quality creative for your account, but also in good quantity. So if we rely on inspiration, we are doomed to fail, okay? So what we need to do is get to work and actually find a good structured way to get our work done and get these creatives out there. For us at Peak, that means this beautiful eight-step process, which seems a bit counterintuitive. Why increase the creative process? Isn't that going only to increase the time that you need from briefing to production? Actually, no, because between each one of these steps, there is a test of quality that we do. So when we are doing the prioritization, we make sure that the briefing is well done and our designers understand what we want out of it. When she does the storyboard, then we understand if the idea that we try to convey on the briefing is actually understood by her. And what we're doing here basically is reducing the amount of errors, reducing the amount that we spend fixing each one of the issues further ahead on the cycle. So, for example, the longest part of the production will be the actual doing the creative. So if we allow us to get to that point without any copy mistakes, we are just saving time. Cool. There we go. So let's start briefing. So I'd like to follow what I call the rule of the three clears. So clear output. So it's very important for our designer to understand what type of creative she needs to produce. Is it a video? Is it a JPEG? What are the sizes? Is it a short animation? Is it a full-fledged video? What the hell she needs to prepare? What are the constraints? 2080 rule for Facebook, for example. Size, a file size that she needs to follow. All this stuff, it's important for her to understand right from the beginning. And of course, last but not least, the objective. A clear objective is very important because if she's going to try to understand what we're trying to say with the briefing, she needs to understand what is the end goal as well. So, so she can have her creative interpretation of the briefing done properly. Prioritization. So we do this once a week. We have a meeting, everyone together, and the way it starts is always we share the results from the previous tests. We share the results for our creatives. So it's completely transparent. Our designers know exactly how their work is doing on the real world. Then the second thing that we do, we check the backlog for the different channels. And I'm going to touch on the backlog idea for a couple of times. So the idea is just a list of your creatives that are ready to go when you need them to go. So we check if we have enough creatives there, if we have enough items on the list for each one, like Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, etc., etc. So otherwise, we'll make the decision, OK, let's produce more creatives for this specific channel. Number 3, we check the business priorities. Are any new products coming out, a marketing campaign coming out, or a seasonal campaign coming out that we need to do? Or is there a new channel that we really want to test or a new partnership? So if those are the cases, those tend to take some priority on our sprint. And then, of course, the time available. It's extremely important. The time of our designer is quite valuable, so we want to make sure that every opportunity that she has during the sprint to produce creatives for us, it needs to be filled. Also, another important thing for the prioritization, and this goes again about the idea of managing your backlog. We spend 70% of the time iterating, which means changing little things on creatives that we know it works, so from colors, from the CTA, from the text a little bit here and there, and 30% of the time is done on new concepts, so completely new ideas. The reason why we try to do this split is because the probability of an iteration working is way higher than a completely new concept, as is kind of logical. And if the main thing that we're doing is managing the backlogs of creatives that we have for our accounts, it's important for us to be able to produce a quantity of good creatives every time that we do sprints. So 70% of iteration, 30% new concepts. Storyboarding. So this is the first time that we actually get to see the interpretation of our designer of the briefing. So this is just a very simple way of her showing, look, this is what I understand from your briefing. So it's the first time that we actually can understand, if this is exactly what we wanted to do or not. It composed of two parts, so visual representation, so we understand what's the action that's going to happen on the video, and a quick description by bullet points. I'm not going into too much detail. I'm not a designer, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But it's important as well to understand this is the first time that we see what's the visual interpretation of a briefing. So we can come up and say, you know what, that actually doesn't look like an art gallery. It looks like a spaceship. Let's make it robots instead of gods and call it a spaceship. So there is always space for us to change a little bit the idea and create some new iterations from the same amount of work. So we're actually gaining time because of this process. Style framing. So here our designer will do the color check. Once again, this is a good time for us to see if there are any errors, any mistakes, something that doesn't work. The designers check if the colors are on brand, if they don't mismatch, etc. So, but the important part here for now the growth side is to really understand, are there any mistakes? Is this we are happy with the end product looking like this? Then comes the production, which for me, as I said, I'm not a designer, so it's kind of a magical work going on. And what we know is that we end up having this. So a ready creative for us to test. Great. And here's where the UA team picks it up and starts working on it. So testing creatives for peak, it's done based on IPM, which is installs per 1,000 impressions. The metric that you should use for testing, it depends on your product, depends on your strategy. If you want to, in our case, we want to acquire loads of downloads with a cheap price. For you, might be you want a more engaged user, or you want a higher lifetime value, you are looking for the whale. So the metric that you select to test your creative should, be towards the goal, the strategy that you're trying to follow. So that's one thing. But also we can see, the different creatives, and we have the error bars for the different IPMs. At the bottom box is the control ad, so which always runs on every testing sprint. So we have not only the account average for that week, but also the control creative. So we have a good understanding on how each creative is going to work. And then comes the backlog. So looking back at this chart, we have two backlogs. We work with two backlogs. So we have what we call generic backlog, which are any ads that are slightly above the average IPM towards the control. And then we have what we call the winning backlog, which are all the creatives that actually do perform better than the control on their sprint. And this distinction is quite important because we know that a really good creative can change the performance of our account. So let's say that we are on a bad month. For some reason, we had a nasty bug on our product, and performance went down the hill in the first 2 weeks. We need to salvage performance. We are going to release a winning creative, which we know will have a better IPM, which will drive way more users to the product, and suddenly, the month is not as bad, hopefully. Obviously, we are not going to let winning creatives on their backlog for a long time, so we normally tend to wait around 2 months maximum on them on the winning side. And actually, I need to say as well, this is a very special run of testing. Normally, we have more creatives on the generic than the winning. It's not always that we get two winners. Normally, it's one winning creative every month and a half, every 2 months. So just to manage our expectations on that front. Then we go live. And the go live is a two-step process. So one, we have our friendly bot that looks at the overall account performance for the different channels. If the performance is bad, it's going to release a suggestion or a flag saying, hey, you should release a winning creative. If not, if the performance is okay, it's average or it's actually going well, it's going to have a look at the creative performance. If the creative performance, each individual line on the creative on the account, if any of these creatives are looking bad, it's going to raise a flag saying, you should pause this ad. Then after that, we'll check the number of creatives on the account without a flag. If there are no, if the threshold, the number of creatives on the account is below the threshold that we have, it's going to raise another flag. You should release this generic creative. On the team side, on the manual side, what we get a list of suggestions from the bot. We approve them. We try to understand if there's any bugs, any outliers, and also if there are any seasonal campaign, because it makes a suggestion of which creative should release. If it's a seasonal campaign, then we have to manually add it to the top of the list and say, no, we are going to release this creative instead. Cool. So there we go. Conclusion. Hey. So number one, don't rely on inspiration. Make sure that you have a process to ensure that you have good quality creative coming through, and also that's on good volumes, because it's extremely important if you want to run a good acquisition activity. 2, give feedback to your designers. It's really hard for them to not know what the hell the creative, their work they do does in the real world. So if you are able to provide them with, oh, this creative really worked well, they'll come with new creative ideas around that and what's the reason, and will allow you to work in a way better way and make them actually happier as well. Create checks to reduce errors. So as I said, a longer process doesn't mean a longer time to produce. You're actually avoiding errors, or you're avoiding mistakes. So make sure to have meetings or checks, or even if it's our case, most of the times it's just a Slack channel that we share everything together, and everything is open to discussion by anyone in the company. So, if we have some French people double-checking, the copy in French is great. I don't speak French, so I don't know if it's right or not. So just make sure that you have that space to check if you're doing any errors. And then 4, we are all human. So even if you give the same rules to your team of how they should check the performance of creatives, there's always emotion involved. So we all have bad days. So if you can actually automate, it doesn't mean that the bot needs to do the changes for you, but at least to propose the changes for you. So because the bots don't have emotion, so they always follow the rules as they are. So try to automate, so you can normalize decisions and you can see your campaigns improving. All right, thank you.